when we see like, you know, Dear White People, Bad Hair, and this, I think one would think like this is like a vast departure from some of your previous work, but how do you think this film is kind of like the natural progression of your feature film work?
Weirdly, Haunted Mansion is both of my two first features kind of smashed together. On one hand, it's an ensemble comedy about people who would not hang out with each other if it weren't for their circumstances. Sam, Lionel, Troy, and Coco would not be friends unless they were the only ones at this very specific school. And then in Bad Hair, it's you know, we're playing with horror camp and we're playing with these sort of genre flourishes to ultimately tell a story about a woman's, you know, decision to choose how she walks through the world. And here, we have this ensemble comedy, we have these genre flourishes, we have, you know, all of these different set pieces and campy fun that we can get into. But at the end of the day, it's in service to like a really real human story. At the center of my movie is a black man who feels his feelings and finds a way to be a father to a kid that he just met. I'm sorry, that's an important story. It's an important story to tell. It moved me to my core reading this, and I had the same. I was like, why would I do this? This doesn't make sense. It's the third film, and I started reading the script written by Katie Dipple. You know, late at night on my way to bed. Gonna be a quick pass. I was up all night in tears. It really touched me, and in all of my stories are kind of these would-be father-son stories that are kind of embedded, you know, whether we're talking about Troy and his father, whether we're talking about Anna Bloodsoe and her uncle in Bad Hair. I don't know why I keep telling those stories, but I mean, I kind of do know because I've been in therapy, but I tend to gravitate towards those stories, kind of mending family ties kind of stories. So for whatever reason, reading the script, I felt like I know exactly how to make this movie, and I don't care what it looks like on the outside. I know how to make this movie, and I want to make something that is escapist and crowd-pleasing, but still has something to say. I really wanted to do that next, and this movie came along.
And how do you think this film will be able to, or if you set out to make sure that it was broad appealing, because like it can appeal to the family, it can appeal to kids, but also it could appeal to adults as well, and people who are familiar with the ride, those who are unfamiliar with it. Did you set out to make something that could be like wide ranging as far as like the appeal?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you know, walking into this movie, I knew that like this wasn't just my story alone to tell. This is a piece of IP that's been around since before I was alive, okay? So from the beginning, me and the Walt Disney Corporation and all the different like stakeholders and you know, creative visionaries that have been involved in this franchise for, you know, for its life, I knew that this was gonna be a group effort. So that was really important to me, to be of service in that way, because I already loved the ride and I already loved New Orleans and I already loved what the script had to say. So I wanted to be of service. That's the first thing. The other thing is that I knew that like I'm the target demo. I mean, I am basically a Disney adult. Okay, like I grew up on Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and going to Disney World and all that. That was me, and I felt like with these kind of family movies, like I wanted to make sure that like if I had nothing to do with the movie and I walked in and I sat down, I would really enjoy myself, and it would not like get me arrested by being wildly inappropriate for families and children. So those were the two things I had to balance, really. And the rest of it is like it's audience testing. I mean, this is a big old movie, and I sort of knew from the get-go that like there's a lot that audiences were gonna have to tell us while we make the film and after we've made the film, and so for me there was a real commitment to sort of leaning into that experience and just listening to hear where audiences were at. And to my and the studio's surprise, mostly where they were at, especially the kids, were like, bring on the scares. We want even more. We want to see the blood. We want to see the gore. And so I ended up getting away with quite a lot of stuff.
No, when I was watching, I was like, I mean, you know, I was like, okay, this is it's definitely thriller. That's like the thriller aspect of it.
Yeah, it's got a little, it's got that, you know, just a little. Okay. I wasn't scared. Just a couple of those moments.
And you mentioned the characters. You know, you're bringing together these ragtag characters who may not necessarily like even interact, but also as far as like the actors and the casting, like these are actors who you may not have thought would have shared screen time together. So what was it like having them as a part of the film?
I mean, that's the most fun part of the job is working with actors like this ensemble and people who really want to play. I learned how to direct in the theater, and so working with actors in an ensemble environment to me is like one of the most fun things to do. And creating space for people who are as brilliantly capable as these actors are to be themselves, but then kind of just like ricochet off of each other. Nothing is more fun to me than that. And I just felt like if we got the right people in each roles, they would sort of find a chemistry and a dynamic that would make this thing come to life. And that's exactly what happened. And I think all over the place there are these dynamic duos that you didn't know you needed. Like I don't think I knew I needed the Owen Wilson Lakeith, buddy comedy, but I need it. I need it more than life itself at this point. I didn't realize that I needed, J.B. Lee Curtis and Tiffany Haddish to be besties, but I did, and I do, and I think I want a lot more from them too. And that was the fun of it. Just kind of putting these people together and being like, oh, well, that's a weird shape. That's fun.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. I can't wait for more people to see this film. So, do either of you have a connection to the attraction in the ride that kind of, made you want to be a part of this film?
I really loved the idea of the Easter eggs and everything, like the commitment to the details. Justin actually used to work at Disneyland when he was younger, so like he just was so specific about really making it for the folks who love it for so many generations to feel really seen. But I loved how he modernized it and just the characters and the storytelling, and I don't know, I think it's quite an adventure to ride. When you go on the ride at Disneyland or Disney World or anywhere, it's very immersive. That's one of the things that's so particular about it. And that's what this film really feels like. So I cannot wait to see this in the theater with everybody, because I've only seen it in the dark by myself at 10 a.m. in the morning. So that immersive feeling, like being on the ride and seeing yourselves, there's that moment where you're kind of on the ride in the little buggy and you see a hitchhiking ghost with you, but you also in those mirrors see everyone else. So it's one of the first things before you ever see yourself with the ghost, you can see everyone else in the buggies around you. Like it's such a communal scare, like you hear people freaking out ahead of you and, and kind of jumping at the thing that you just jumped at behind you. And I think that's just so fun about it. So that, to me, makes it feel like the perfect ride to turn into a movie that you see in the theater.
Yeah, it's also what happens in the theater. Like that's what makes the experience so fun. You're with other people, they're reacting, you're reacting to them reacting. We're so social that we like to see other people reacting, and it sort of either validates us or sometimes makes us feel like I disagree, or but it's just dope to be in a communal space with people experiencing something, and so much of the ride is incorporated into the movie that, I mean, it's going to be so fun for a bunch of people who are fans of the ride to be in a theater together watching this movie and knowing that that's the thing, you know what I mean? Like there's so many of those, and then there's actual literal scenes where people are on ride, like you're on a ride, your chair's moving like you're in a ride.
No, like the funniest part during the screening was when the characters were getting thrown out of the chairs, and like I felt like it still would have felt the same when I was watching it at home, because being in a theater and around people and seeing people react the same way I did was pretty special. So I definitely, that resonates with me as well. And this film is, it's for everyone. I feel like, the whole family can watch it, but it also has like a lot of important themes as well. So Lakeith, for you, how would you describe Ben's journey throughout this film and kind of how that also relates to, like grief and healing and kind of like reconciling things that you may not have thought about before?
Yeah, I think grief, like a lot of less than favorable or negative emotions, can be seated in the soul as something that can sort of start to bog you down over time if it's not properly therapized, and like learning how to deal with those harder, tougher questions. So figuring out what is the best way to ingest your experiences and deal with things like PTSD or mourning and things and how you're going to do that. I think actually the best way to do that is with community and through other people and reflections, but ultimately it's going to call for some internal investigation for you to make the proper decision for yourself. And so I think Ben finds himself going through those things where he feels isolated and alone until people show up who give him an opportunity to interact with others and interact with things that he thought he knew the answer to, but he had to humble himself and re-ask these questions and make new decisions in order to discover new things. And I think that's what we all have to do. We have to make a choice to try to start a different internal conversation, and then we can navigate and move and perhaps open ourselves up to seeing things from a new, fresh perspective.
Yeah, that's the reason why some of my favorite scenes in the movie are between Ben and Travis, because, you know, I feel like they kind of needed each other in different ways from what they were going through, whether that was, you know, his grief or him just being like in a, you know, a new town, a new school. And it kind of, it just really made me feel like, wow, people coming together really sometimes changes things. And, you know, the fact this is a theatrical release and, like, you know, we're still having movies in theaters, but, like, you know, being together in communal spaces is still something that's still relatively new for us, even in 2023. So that's something to think about as well, for sure. And for your character of Gabby, she kind of has like this important role when this ragtag group of characters comes together. She's kind of the one that like gives purpose and like grounds everyone and has everyone stay on task for, like, you know, trying to like get rid of this once and for all.
Protect her son.
Yes, and protect her son too. So why do you think that it was so important for this character to have this sort of role within this group, this ensemble, but she's kind of like that force within it?
I love it. I love playing the mom, you know, and the hostess. I think she feels a lot of responsibility. I think she feels a lot of guilt, as you do when you're a single mom and, you know, you put your child into a precarious, dangerous situation, and, you know, she feels a strong sense of responsibility, and, you know, she's just got also a lot of conviction. She's a very strong person, you know, and she's constantly always wanting to put her best foot forward. And I just loved how she didn't succumb to her fear. She didn't succumb to her anger. She didn't succumb to her guilt or her shame. You know, she had those emotions, but you could see her driving force was her love of her son and her faith and her belief that, you know, that something better could come from it if they put their effort towards it, you know. And I think that's what she was constantly pushing for the other folks around her. You're an expert, you know what you're doing, and if all of us together we can make something special. And I loved that alchemy. I loved her understanding and appreciation of that, and her faith, and, you know, just sort of that representation. Like, ultimately this is exactly what she wants in this house. That's why she got it. It's because she could do this B&B and have all kinds of ragtag people come through and kind of show them to her son, like, the diversity and the beauty of this world, you know. And so I loved that didn't get lost, you know. It wasn't like this could be an expression that could shut everybody down and show, like, never try, never make an effort, you know. But instead it turned into, this is why we show up every day and do our best, because magic can happen, you know. And I loved that being a discovery almost for every single character. It's like a validation of why they get up, you know, and like, while we're alive, like, this is what we get to do while we're alive.
Yes.
Love it, yeah.
And lastly, what was it like having, not only being a part of this movie that's set in New Orleans, but also filming in New Orleans? Like, this is my first time here, and like, it's, the humidity is like, it's sticky. Yeah. But what was that experience like?
Yeah, there's like the hitchhiking ghost. It sticks with you. It's just there. It doesn't leave you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, the air is thick with humidity and with spirituality. It's like sort of beating through the city. But I love it. You know, I love the heat. California kind of tripping right now with the heat, so I wanted to turn up a little bit. So I like it, and I like the history and the spiritual nature of people here, and, you know, sort of Africanness that exists here. It just feels good to have in the backdrop, you know, of anything that you might be doing here. I filmed another movie here called The Photograph, and it was beautiful as well. And that was my first time here, so I really wanted to come back. So I was glad this film brought me back here, and it was just super beautiful experience. And I didn't get a chance to go on any haunted tours, but hopefully I can do that before I leave this time.
I think
have you done them?
Yes, I went on one today.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Apparently our hotel, the Press Hotel, is haunted. So like, that's
nice.
We had to keep an extra eye out tonight.
Okay, so you one eye open. Okay.
Yeah, yes. Well, thank you both so much for chatting with me. I enjoyed this film so much, and I wanted to know, like, did you, both of you, either have any experience with the ride that may have influenced, you know, your portrayal in this film, or just wanted to be a part of it?
Well, I knew the attraction.
The attraction.
The attraction, Haunted Mansion. I'm old. I've been on it since I was a very little girl, and there's something about the nostalgia of the ride. The attraction that I really that is very important to me. Justin was going to make his own movie using beautiful homages to the attraction, but I felt like what they were doing was very unique to what the movie was.
And for me, you know me, I used to go to Disneyland all the time, and you had to get on Haunted Mansion. Because you got to get in that line because it's the coolest ride. It's most like, it's air conditioned once you go inside. Now, it do be scary when the walls get tall, and then you like go into this little dark place, and then you get into the theater, you turn around, and it's ooh, but it feels so good at the same time. And that's something that I loved about it. And that's kind of how I felt on set. Like, it'd be a ghost over here. I forget that there's a ghost in the scene that day. And I'm like, oh, hey, but it's nice and cool on the stage. Sorry, man.
And it was beautiful. They
They
built an entire mansion on stage. And it was done so beautifully, and the costumes are, I've never in my life worn costumes like that.
How long did it take you to put your costume on?
I had 4 helpers.
You had 4
I had
helpers.
to have 4 people to put that on. And they created a slant board for me, like the old movie stars, because it was very hard to sit in it, because I was in a corset very, very, very tight. Because Jeffrey Curlin gave me back my waistline, which has been lost for a decade. And he, boy, they tied me in one day, and then he walked in and he was like, and he put his foot on my back and yanked that thing and
gotta get together.
Gave me a 31-inch waistline for about a week, and it was unbelievable.
She ready. Wait. So it would take what, like an hour, 2 hours?
Took about an hour.
Now, me being a hardhead, I didn't want everybody touching on my body, and they gave me one person, but then I still was a hardhead. I'm like, I will put on my own pantyhose. I will put on my own, I'm a big girl.
You were like, I got it. You're like, I got
It took
it.
me an hour and a half, and I had these claws.
You had claws. You had super long
so
nails.
I would put everything on, but never tighten nothing, and then the girl would come in and tighten everything. It'd take me about an hour and a half to get everything on, the makeup, the hair, like the big old wrap. I always felt like I felt like I was transforming as I was putting it on. Like, because I imagined like this is what Harry would be doing. Every ring that I had to match, I would put it on like, you know, like I was here, like, oh, this is gonna kill them in the mansion today. Like, that's what I was doing in my room.
I feel like the transformations in this movie are both literal and physical, like in every sense of the word.
Yes,
and
the nails.
the nails.
She had. I asked her about wiping. I was curious.
Everybody asked me about wiping.
I mean,
there's a technique
I'm
to
telling you, her nails were this long.
There's a technique to it.
Well,
you know,
we can't do it on national television.
I mean, you just gotta.
I know, but it's a this. It's not even. I even mentioned.
We'll use context. Like genuinely, for you, you play such a character that's like iconic with the ride, and you have so many big moments in the film. But you know, some of those moments are like in the context of the crystal ball at the same time. So what was that like? You know, being able to channel that, but it's like kind of within like a confine.
It was the first time I've ever had costumes made to that specification and that elaborate of a costume, and I've never done motion capture. Where you wear dots on your face and you are put in. I mean, we were there together. I mean, it's just they hold your head with a vice because you can't move your head. So it was acting with your face, but without moving your head around. It was interesting.
Yeah.
It was so cool to watch you do that, though. And I felt like I learned so much from you. And the way she did it, she would hit every time, and then Justin would give her some suggestions, and she would just, the way she would move her eyes, and I'm like, oh, I want to learn how to do that. And like nothing else was moving. I'm like, how do you?
It was intense.
How do you do that, though? It's control, right? Because
It's
I can't
age.
talk without moving.
It's age. It's age, darling. It's just age.
Well, I want to be just like you when I grow up.
Okay.
And Tiffany, for you, I want to know, were there any other cinematic references that you had for the character of Harriet? Because I was getting a little bit of like, you know, Whoopi and Ghost tease, like some things like that within your character. So I wanted to know, were you thinking about any of those when you were approaching the role?
Yeah, I definitely watched Ghost. I definitely, you know, watched our girl, Miss Cleo. I had found some old episodes because, you know, she used to do long infomercials and be taking people's calls. Miss Cleo, call me now.
Yeah, the commercials, like the
And then I watched
they would come
her
on late at
documentary.
night. They would come on real late at night.
I go to bed early.
Yeah, you 9:30, right? 9 o'clock, 8:75, 7:45, 6, 6:30.
There you go.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness, I couldn't do it. I'd be up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I am. That's the point. Going to bed at 6:30, so you wake up at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and then the world is your oyster.
Yeah, but then like everything's closed.
But you can control the universe.
But no, because ain't nobody up.
They are in New York.
You're right. You're right about that. You're right about that.
Just-
But what if you are in New York? Then you go to bed at 3:30?
We'll talk later.
Well, thank you both so
Thank
much
you.
for
You're
chatting
so
with
lovely.
me, and I can't wait for more people to see the film.